Hey everybody, Dr. Julie Quinn here, and here's my video review of the sample paper for writing assignment number 2. Okay, so as we go through this is a pretty darn good submission. Let me just let you know that if this was a student that was submitting to my class, I'd be pretty happy with it. I'm going to give you some recommendations though to make the best out of your submission for writing assignment 2. And again, remember, this is the assignment that takes all of the personas into mind as you're building the instructions that they will use, and hopefully this feedback is going to be helpful for you. So looking at this, I see a title that pops. I see an opening blurb that's not too long. No, this should not be written in first person point of view. You shouldn't say, I feel that ordering from Banana Blossom Bistro. Remember, your job, imagine you work for the company, you work for the restaurant, you work for the organization, whatever it is. Local, nonprofit, mom and pop, something independent, okay? And that you are presenting them. So you'll notice that this is written in second person. Much of it is in second person point of view. The yous and the yours are fine on this assignment. You're giving directions. So writing in the imperative is not a problem, like with the steps and saying if you order online, because you're telling your audience, the personas that you're imagining and other potential users, how to function and how to complete a task on that side. So short and sweet and to the point, great. This little blurb in blue is nice. You can make it privacy note. You could add a little bit of feedback, and I think more contrast would be good. A lighter blue on a white background doesn't provide a lot of contrast, so that was something I would recommend for that student. And by the way, some of these recommendations don't mean it's a significant point deduction. It's just if you're thinking about creating these types of professional documents for public consumption, you want to make sure that they're as usable as possible, and you don't want to be super wordy. I don't need a 2,000-word document for this. I don't need 57 steps. So if you find that as you put your own writing assignment 2 together, it's getting a little long in the tooth, work with me, reach out to me. Let's set up a time in a conference so I can tell you, okay, I think you're going down too specifically, and we can pull back up a little bit. We can make some assumptions, especially with personas intact, about what does this user know, and will they, you don't need a step, for example, that says click next as the only part of the step. You're drilling down too much. But if that's part of a longer step, that's okay. So let's take a look at what we've got here. This one starts with a prepositional phrase. I would not recommend that. I would recommend always starting with the imperative. Access bananabistro.com. You don't have to tell readers from their preferred browser. They're going to use their preferred browser regardless. Okay. You've got a figure, name, a number, a title, and the corresponding image, and everything is nicely aligned. We're going to talk about alignment in upcoming weeks, but everything is nicely aligned on the left side on this margin right here, and it's sort of centered on the page. That's great. You can align everything on the left. I would not recommend aligning it on the right-hand side. There are certain languages like Hebrew that does that, but I would not recommend doing that in English. I think it just looks a little off, so centered or left. And I also think it's better to put the title captions above versus below an image. I'm not so sure. I think this image is fine. You can take partial screenshots, by the way. You don't have to have the entire page. You can make this even a little bit bigger. You'll notice there is some white space at the bottom of the page. That's fine. You'll notice that there is some consistency here. The numbers are all aligned. This is a PDF, so I can't pull it up in Word. But if you're in Word, all your numbers should align in the same space. See how it starts with the imperative? That's great. The other things I like about this step in particular is the action item is bolded. I'm not a fan of quotes around it. I mean, I won't grade against it, but I think the less punctuation, the better. But of course, you have to use proper punctuation. For example, like if you need to pause, please definitely use the comma as necessary. But we can streamline our operation if we bold and match the font of the image. Now, this image is too small. I can't read. I have my glasses on, and this should be at like 100%. Let me zoom in a little bit. Even as I zoom in, it's barely legible for me. So one of my big recommendations for students is to zoom in. Make the image a little bit bigger. I don't care about white space in this document. It's perfectly fine. But you always want to keep the step, the label, the caption, and the image all together Okay, even if you have a little bit of extra white space, that's fine. There's a bit of a gap here. You could tighten this a little bit. This gap is fine between step and corresponding image, but I probably would tighten this up a little bit. And I love that the fact that the image was edited. The circles and the arrows are really nice, and they draw our eye to a specific section of the text. Step 3, starting with an opening phrase, but I prefer select create account if you would like to. So you can trim some of the phraseology down here. You'll notice that this is bolded like the prior image, but it's not in all caps like the prior image, and that's okay because it's mirroring. Looks like it's title case here and it's title case there. I like that mirroring. There's nice contrast, a white background. The text is all black. So this does not need to be wildly fancy. No funky fonts either. Something pretty straightforward. Serif or sans serif, it doesn't matter to me what type of font you choose. And if you're going to italicize the title of each image, that you do it consistently. If you're going to capitalize, that you do it consistently. It looks like there's a ton of consistency in this text. I just think the images could be a tiny bit bigger. That's like my biggest complaint, but I will tell you now, I think that this is fantastic, and I would have given this an A without a doubt, right? I've been looking at these for a couple of years now, these types of assignments. So anyways, if you do a sub-step section, you want to make sure you have at least 2 sub-steps, and this one has A and B. That's great. Okay. You'll notice that the imperative is like select, download, open, click, pay. And you don't have to use the word you. That it's all second person point of view, but you can strip out you select your desired dish. That's a little much. But again, I would make that image slightly bigger. And I love the editing. It just draws your eyes to the right place on the screen. This is fantastic. There are a couple of extra steps, a little bit more, but it's not overwhelming. And you'll notice that there's just a really nice consistency. Things aren't moving around on the pages. I don't see step 15 on one page and then the actual figure on the next page. And you'll notice with the sub-steps, it's now step 15, but figure 19. One of the things you can do when you have sub-steps, let's go back to the sub-steps. If you want, see this one right here? Step 6 had multiple ones. This could be figure 6A, and this one could be figure 6B. So for step 7, figure 7. So you could do that for even more internal consistency, but either way, I mean, that's me just being super picky. Note that in the assignment guidelines, it does say add some notes outside of the steps. For example, if it's a restaurant and they don't take American Express and you're on the pay section, note, we only accept Visa and MasterCard, like that kind of thing. And that will attend to the pain points for a user like in running assignment 1. The personas where I think our second user would want to use American Express, so that user wouldn't be able to. So that user would have to rethink their credit card options. Now, I am perfectly fine with you having one reference just to the main website. And again, of course, you're going to have to take screenshots so I can tell where they come from. You're not to be using any clip art or anything outside of this. I think that the screenshots are what matters. And if you need help with setting up how to do a screenshot, I can always step in and help. The final part of this assignment is how were the personas accommodated? And this is to get you to think of, okay, those 3 wide-ranging users that you've created, which step? And I love the specificity of this. In step 1, I gave the exact URL to Jared. In step 3, I accommodated Melanie. And it doesn't have to be as specific, as widely detailed as this, but you just don't want to say I accommodated Jared when I did X. I at least want to know in what step or in what note or in what figure, right? So short and sweet and to the point is one of the hallmarks of technical writing. The best things you can do as a technical writer is to have your audience forget that they even had to use instructions. It's not literature. It's not something that people think about later. It's a functional document that has, for you at least, a short shelf life that got you through it without any sort of frustration if you're the user using the website. So that's my feedback for you on writing assignment number 2. And let me briefly pull up the rubric for grading. Before I actually talk about the rubric, let me just skim through writing assignment 2 set of instructions. You got to have 8 or more steps. You have to have at least 8 graphics, and you must incorporate the personas in the assignment. You'll notice it's not particularly long. And I did go over that when I went over the student sample. Remember, local institution does not mean the local Pizza Hut. It means like an independent mom and pop place that doesn't have a staff available, like a robust IT department to create these types of documents. Regional, local organization. I think restaurants are great. If I see an international one, I'm going to give you a strong recommendation to rewrite. Okay. Example of those notes are also, an example of each step is also set up in that student sample. Here's the order of information. It's also mirrored in the sample. We've got some links to help you. The due date is going to be set up in the syllabus and right in Leo attached to the assignment, okay? There will be opportunities for you to submit drafts as well. And I'll post that at the beginning of week 2 to give you that feedback. Usually the draft in the middle of the week, so I can get you feedback, and then the final by the Tuesday night of the week that assignment is due. Especially for the bigger assignments like writing assignment 2. All right, so here's how the assignment's actually going to be graded, because I think that you could work backwards. You could use this rubric as a checklist to make sure that you've accommodated your personas, but that you've accomplished every task required that will get you the highest points possible. Now, 8 or more steps, 10 points. Do your instructions start with that imperative, like I reviewed earlier in this video? Click, download, open, review, starting with the imperative verbs. Are your steps numbered? And are the steps provide clear instructions? If they're super wordy and entire paragraphs, they're not going to be as functional for a user who just wants to quickly move through a process than something that's shorter and sweeter. The student sample, I think, is great with showing you short and sweet and to the point instructions. We don't want this to be too wordy. Do you have at least 2 notes? The notes, sorry, I scrolled a little bit too fast there. 2 notes, the note about maybe the American Express card, or the note about gift cards can only be used for 6 months after them being issued, or this is the best browser for our website. Those types of notes are great. 2 across the entire document, that works. The overview that gives us a blurb is worth 5 points. You've got to have at least 8 or more graphics. That's 10 points. Now, we break it down into clarity and originality of graphics. Are your graphics clear? Like, can I read them? If the font's not readable, you're not going to get full points. I mean, if I can squint, maybe that's an 8 out of 10. But remember, a little bit bigger is always better. And I reviewed that earlier in this video. That you took the original screen captures. Oops. And that graphics are labeled with figure, number, and title. All of that's worth points. That the document design, that everything's not all smushed up next to each other, like, and I went over that with the figure labels. I was like, tighten that up a little bit in the student sample. And that proximity is demonstrated. Proximity is you don't have figure 15 header on page 7, but then the figure 15 itself is on page 8. Grammar and mechanics, language choices, spell checking, consistent capitalization use. That's the language choice section. And finally, 14 points for how did the personas, how were they accommodated? All of that can and should be in one document. Okay. So reach out if you have any questions. Again, I think my normal rule of thumb is if you post your draft by like Friday night, I can get you draft feedback. And if you want feedback, and for this assignment, there's no requirement to post a draft, but if you want to by Friday night, then I can get you feedback over the weekend, and then you can review that and submit your final by the end of our natural week, which is Tuesday. So if you have any questions on writing assignment 2, the student samples, the assignment overview, or how it's graded, don't hesitate to reach out and to let me know.